Hello everyone, just a quick insert here before we start this video. I wanted to make this to address something in the comments that has come up. For my first video in this series, that's the video where I talk about, why can't we be patriotic, what is it to be a true patriot, that type of thing. In that video I talk about people who do not necessarily like the country they live in, and I made the point, and yet they refuse to move to a different country. I asked why are you in that country, and continued that point with, well, you can absolutely leave, so why are you there? That in no way, shape, or form means I'm saying, get out. I do not believe that goes against everything I believe in. So what I meant was, you're saying this is bad, and yes, a lot of the ones that we hear that are on like social media and stuff are of course going to be mainly the extreme examples. But if you're claiming that, this isn't the norm, but one person I was listening to claimed that the U.S. was a failed state, I think they have failures in a few different things, but I don't think it's a failed state by any means. That being said, that person still lives in the U.S. and that is what it is. So the question I was really asking was, well, you could absolutely leave the U.S. if you wanted. Why are you in that country? Maybe I did it in the reverse order in that video. Maybe my wording could have been better. Fair enough. But that is what I was asking. I'm not saying anyone should get out. I'm not saying anyone should have to or should leave. That would never be something I believe in. I want a country full of differing opinions. If everyone has the same opinion and a crisis arises and they can't solve it, no one can, because they all have the same ideas, opinions, etc. So I would never tell anyone else to leave a country because they disagree with something. But yeah, that's it. Just wanted to put that out there so that everyone knows, and I'll continue on to this video. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Andrew. So there are a lot of things that I worry about when it comes to Canada. Just to name two off the top of my head. Grocery and gas prices are so high right now that I know many people who are struggling just to get by month to month, who weren't struggling a year ago. On top of that, there's the housing issue, there's inflation issues, and there's stuff going on. Now that being said, I still love Canada. Maybe there are some other countries that I might see potentially living in, but generally speaking, I want to, I'm here, and I do love Canada for many reasons as well. But I do want to highlight another issue, and it's something I hold dearly because I believe freedom of expression, freedom of speech is one of the most important privileges we have. Yes, I said privilege, not right. And I do mean that. It's a privilege. And unfortunately, in recent years, it has been eroded slightly. Now, I made a video, or a series of videos actually, a while ago, talking about different examples of things that were happening in Canada at the time, and how free speech was being eroded, or how it could erode the free speech here in Canada. I will, if I can find them, I'll link them in the description below for you guys if you want to go back and check them out. But I do want to talk about that here today. So recently, I don't even know if it's passed yet or not. I don't know if they're still working on it, if they're still fine-tuning it or not. But basically, the Canadian government has either passed or is close to passing an online media bill. If it hasn't passed, it will. Basically, the online media bill is going to be helping fund the CBC for the future. Basically, if you're a media company that makes a certain amount of money, you have to give a certain amount to basically it goes to the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Company here in Canada. As far as I know, the CBC has always been government funded. Maybe wrong about that, but at least so far as I know. And yeah, it's kind of something that's kind of iffy, if you know what I mean. Do I really want a broadcasting company that is the main news that we watch here in Canada, funded by the government? Best case scenario, probably not, but that's a bit of an aside anyway. Okay, so what else is in this bill? Well, this bill also is going to crack down on media sources portraying misinformation or fake news. This I do have a problem with. First of all, you've got the whole question of who decides what's fake news and what isn't. I mean, I agree that if they're stating fact, whatever that fact may be, and they're stating it wrong, that they should be corrected, or they should be forced to make a correction. That being said, the idea of fake news is a very if we use the example from the States, fake news has been used to combat real fake news, and fake news has been used to combat inconvenient things that people don't like. I'm okay with it being combated against the first. I'm not okay with it being combated against the second. So why would they even need this? Personally, I don't think there is some fake news out there, and when I say fake news, I mean like real fake news. And I'm not talking about things like The Onion that do spoof and stuff like that. But it just, unfortunately, and I should say, none of this has happened yet. None of what I'm about to talk about is happened yet, but it could happen in the future. And part of the privilege of having rights is knowing when they're vulnerable and protecting them when they are. So, in the future, if this goes through, which it probably will, I think it has already, actually, truth be told, if they determine what you're saying is fake news, now I don't think they've defined what fake news is, which is a problem in and of itself. But if they decide that, oh, well, that's inconvenient to my narrative, or, oh, that's just wrong because I say it's wrong, well, potentially they could take you down, or try to take you down, here in Canada. So, that's not great in and of itself. Now, on top of that, they're also looking at podcasts, and basically what they want is any podcast that makes $10 million or more, and that's makes, not profits, just makes, which is not actually a lot for the very successful podcasts, then basically they want them to disclose. They want whoever is hosting that podcast. So if it's on your own website online, I know a lot of people don't do that anymore, or less people do that, but you would have to disclose your list of viewers if you have any, or or they would want something like Spotify to disclose who's actually listening and those people's information. If we were talking 10 years ago, I wouldn't be as worried about this as I am today. That being said, unfortunately, when the Freedom Convoy was happening, the Canadian government got the list of donations to the Freedom Convoy from GoFundMe, and then used it to freeze any Canadians' assets that donated to the Freedom Convoy. Any Canadian, if they donated, had their assets frozen. And that's ridiculous. To me, that's almost punitive. Like that's like, oh, you donated to this? Well, you're gonna have to worry for a while. Maybe that's not what was in their heads. That's what it feels like. Who knows though? Who knows? But anyway, so going back to this podcast thing. The other thing, so actually, I'll talk about the list of information more first. Why does the Canadian government need that? No good can come from a government having that information. Bad certainly can, but no good can. Now, best case scenario, they may use it to target advertising, but likely not. And it could be in the future that, oh, this podcast is bad, and anyone who watches it, well, XYZ could happen. I don't know what could happen. Who knows? But that is something to watch for in the future. Now, the other thing they're talking about is creating a loose hierarchy of podcasts that can be viewed here in Canada, and they're going to base the hierarchy on, the government's movement towards inclusion and Native rights, Native issues, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm all for inclusion and Native issues and all that stuff, don't get me wrong, but I don't need to talk about that constantly to be for it. And again, structuring the podcast in this hierarchy, no good can come of this. Like, what is it going to mean? Let's say you're at the bottom little bit of the hierarchy. You're considered the least inclusive, as per the Canadian government. What is that going to mean down the road? I mean, right now it may mean nothing, but it could be something like they quote-unquote shadow ban you here in Canada. It could mean that you don't get advertisers. They won't allow advertisers to advertise on your podcast. At the very least, it's potentially pressuring companies like Spotify and other podcasting platforms to, hey, these are the types of podcasts you should be releasing, or you should be accepting from people who, make the podcast. I mean, just to use an example of a podcast I listen to, Joe Rogan podcast, I can't see that being very high on the Canadian hierarchy. Well, I'm not even going to say what I was going to say, because I don't think I will get it on YouTube, but let's just say I don't think that his views align with the Canadian government's views. And so does that then mean that, what is that going to mean? So I think these are things we need to know. As Canadians, I think we need to know why the hierarchy, what's going to happen as a result of the hierarchy, and why do you want the information of the people who listen to these podcasts. Just, something to be concerned about for the future. I don't think it's going to bring anything now. It may never bring anything. But the potential for abuse is there. And because the potential is there, we need to be aware of it, and we need to do something about it, in my opinion at least. But that's going to be it for this one. I hope you have a good day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.